I'm Will Aubrey. My buddy Joe Darnell is here with me, and it's time for another edition of the Improbability Engine. And today we're going to be talking about all of the unusual things happening in sports. But first, our moment of what, and we'll go with you first.
All right, my moment of what just came across Twitter not too long ago. The announcement or the reporting of a possible announcement on the findings against the University of North Carolina by the NCAA on a Friday afternoon, Eastern time. I saw the timing of that, and I did a double take on it. My first thought was, gee, I wonder if they're trying to free up their schedule for something later on. Why would they do that now? Are they trying to bury this story, Will?
Maybe.
Do they think that's going to work?
Maybe.
This is the problem that is currently befalling the powers that be at the NCAA. They've decided that they're going to enforce petty, nonsensical, dumb rules, like how many packets of cream cheese a recruit gets with their bagel, or if they get packets of cream cheese with their bagel, or if that's considered a recruiting violation during an official visit. They decided to wade into that hard-hitting, in-depth issue. And they're going to, from what it seems to me, from the timing of what they're announcing, they're going to gloss over the number one reason why there's college athletics at all.
Be fair now. Wait until they make the announcement.
No, I'm prejudging. They've lost their ability, in my mind, to get the benefit of the doubt. They just haven't done well. They've done poorly with what they do. They've decided they're going to attack these small rules, but they're not going to enforce the big ones because it hits them in the pocketbook. If the NCAA, and I will grant them if they don't put major penalties on the University of North Carolina athletics program, the NCAA has lost all of its credibility.
I think you're probably right about that. My moment of what? The New England Patriots are 2-2.
Yeah.
What's going on? How is this possible?
Well,
they're my Patriots. They're supposed to start 4-1, or actually 4-0. At worst 3-1. They're 2-2.
I mean, I'm not surprised by it, to be honest with you.
Coach Belichick needs to figure things out.
Well, if they had a better coach or a better quarterback, maybe they'd win more games.
Well,
no, no.
It would be hard to find a better coach or a better quarterback.
Agreed.
But as surprising as that was to me, you look at the NFL standings. There's one 4-0 team.
Yeah.
One 4-0 team. And that's extremely unusual. Usually you've got 3, sometimes 4 that start the season 4-0. We may be about to find out what parity really looks like, and I'm not sure we'll like it.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest issue. What you find a lot of times is that while you're watching these teams, that people talk about, well, I don't like watching the dynasties. I don't like watching these teams just run over other teams. But then I think back to whenever I was a kid, and the games that I wanted to see the most were the 49ers and the Cowboys. Put the 49ers and the Cowboys in the mid-90s, early 90s, put them on the field at the same time, it's going to be magical. It's going to be great football. It doesn't even matter who wins. At that point, that's the Super Bowl. There were a few years where if you had any combination of 2 of these 3 teams, the Green Bay Packers, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Dallas Cowboys, if you had any of those 3 teams playing each other, any 2, it was great football. There were Hall of Famers on both sides. The games were back and forth. They had just enough intrigue where, who's going to step up and play? Who's going to... Those are the greatest games. And I'm a Saints fan. I was in the same division with the freaking Niners for decades. And the Niners just kept winning, and my Saints just couldn't get over the hump. And I still liked watching the 49ers play the Cowboys or the 49ers play the Packers.
Who were you for when the 49ers played the Cowboys?
You know, depending on the year. I didn't like George Seifert. I liked Bill Walsh. I liked Joe Montana. I wasn't a huge Steve Young fan. So the transition from Montana to Young, I liked all the Montana teams. So I kind of pulled for them. And then when Steve Young was a quarterback, I started pulling for, Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and their huge offensive line. And, you look at those guys and they would just do things that were amazing.
I just never have liked the Cowboys. But moving on, let's talk about the scandal in college basketball again and the way that it has played out and how it has ensnared the University of Louisville. Although no U of L coaches were arrested and the University of Louisville is not mentioned in any of the indictments, some of the background information that was provided seems to suggest that the University of Louisville and actually Rick Pitino and by extension the University of Louisville are involved. Pitino has essentially been fired, and Tom Jurich is on paid administrative leave. He was the athletic director.
Right.
Pitino's been replaced in the interim by David Padgett, one of his assistants. Padgett played at U of L, and also Jurich has been replaced in the interim by Vince Tyree, who's the son of a Louisville legend, Charlie Tyree, whose number hangs in the rafters at the Yum Center.
Yeah, I've got a couple issues with this. I understand that U of L's not trying to sever quickly the ties of the administration that was just in play. That's Jurich, that's Pitino. You don't want to cut ties immediately with those. And that would be a reasonable...
Well, they basically cut ties with Pitino.
Right, but they brought Pitino's assistant on.
Do
you see what I'm saying?
I don't think they had any choice.
Maybe. But the problem is
and,
from a perception
standpoint. Let's be clear. He has 1 year's experience really as an assistant coach, Padgett does.
Right.
Before that, he was the equivalent of a graduate assistant, not an actual real assistant coach. So it would be like if, say, Murray State were in a similar situation, if they hired somebody at the bottom of the staff to take over as head coach. It's not like Padgett had been intricately involved in everything that had been going on.
Right, which doesn't make it better, makes it worse, because they didn't get rid of any of their other assistants, from what I can tell.
Well, that's up in the air. That, Padgett said, would be decided by the athletic director who's just been hired.
Right, and I can appreciate that. The issue at hand is either you're saying that we're going to cut ties with our Hall of Fame coach, and we're pretty sure all the experienced assistants for this team, because what they've been accused of is egregious enough, and there's enough information already at hand for us to do this for cause. In which case, why keep anybody on the staff? It doesn't matter what they were doing. Why keep anybody on the staff? It's not like there's not other Rick Pitino stylistic coaches from his coaching tree that they couldn't call.
Well,
but
anybody with a job isn't going to come and take over the program at this point, number one.
Probably true.
Number two, is when it comes to hiring somebody like Tom Crean, who I had initially thought would have been a good option for them, a head coach who's been successful, who is out of a job currently. You don't know where this NCAA investigation is going to go, where the FBI investigation
Absolutely
is going to
agree.
go. You could hire somebody like that and then find out in 6 months that they're involved in it.
Well, and that's probably true. What it looks like, though, is that no, we're just going to put this guy up here as the figurehead coach because we haven't really fired any of the other assistants. Those guys, we might end up keeping them so that they can keep running this program behind the scenes. And so there's no separation at all. Yeah, we got rid of Patino. That sucks. That's probably a black eye for the program. But all the guys who recruited these guys to Louisville, a top 5 caliber team, roster-wise, I truly believe that they are. They're one of the better teams preseason-wise. If nothing had happened, they'd be one of those teams that you talked about all season long. It's once again looking like, well, we care more about wins.
See, I think
than
that's
cleanliness.
I think that's an incorrect perception.
Well,
And Vince Tyree, the incoming interim athletic director, says, actually, he's the acting athletic director. He says the number one thing going forward is going to be integrity. Now, there are a lot of Louisville fans who did not like Tyree's being hired because they complained that he's a University of Kentucky graduate. Okay? And they believe that Governor Bevin and his cabal of University of Kentucky graduates that have been installed on the board at U of L and as the acting president at U of L, that their design is to destroy the university. This is crazy.
well, I'll put it to you like this. At this point, from the athletics perspective, basically U of L athletics is doing it all by themselves. I mean, you want to talk about a program getting all the wrong signals put out about their brand.
Well,
And you can go to
I think
Petrino.
I think Vince Tyree is a great hire.
I think that's possibly the case.
I think that his focus on integrity is very important.
Well, no,
and
his-
I think
his
that
stated focus
I
on
think
integrity.
I think the fans who are disturbed by his hire because he's a UK graduate are crazy. If you looked at it that way, you would never have hired Howard Schnellenberger to be the football coach because he graduated from the University of Kentucky.
Right.
It just
No.
doesn't make any sense.
And I think we agree with the reactionary part of that is just, it's absurd. But I look at it from a standpoint, you can say integrity is important. You can say that can be your stated goal is integrity is important because anybody you bring in for that job should say, well, integrity is important. But you can't say integrity is important and keep the same people who were there previously.
Well, give them a little time and they'll get rid of those other assistants, I'm confident. Moving along, though.
Okay, what do you got?
Well, I believe you want to talk about Murray State basketball.
Yeah, practice has started. It's it's as if the long, dark summer is over and we're opening up into a bright, crisp fall day. It's beautiful. Basketball practice has started. So lots of little stuff going on out there. I have not been able to see the team practice personally, but I'm liking what I'm hearing from people who have. And that's good. You've got to have some positive, palpable buzz, especially after last year, to be honest with you.
I was at practice the other day, and it was extremely intense, at a level beyond what I recall having seen in most practices that I've been to in the past. That may be an excellent thing. The impression that I got was very positive.
Right.
And, a little anecdote. Before practice started, we were sitting there. We were all going to interview Coach McMahon. And Breon Whitley walked in, and he sat down in the coach's chair, and he said, "I'm the best player on the team." And then he got up and walked away.
You know what? You love to hear that from a freshman, especially when it's coming with reports of these guys really do like each other. You know, one of the things that you get with a lot of these programs and a lot of teams, especially after a coaching change, it doesn't matter who you're changing to. You'll get factions develop in the locker room, and you can't have that. I mean, you really can't. Not and continue to be successful. So hearing that these guys like each other, hearing that they want to hang out with each other, they try to make each other better, they push each other in practice. I think the level of intensity that the coaching staff is putting on the defensive end, if they're receptive, the players are receptive to that and making practice more intense, that's a group of guys that are doing what you want them to do. They need to be able to, go into practice and say, look, I got to go earn my spot. You know what I mean? I love these guys. I'm going to make them better, but I'm going to go earn my spot. I'm going to go earn my minutes. And that's oftentimes the hardest thing for incoming players to fully grasp at the Division I level. You know, you're, without exception, you're bringing in guys who were the best player on their high school team, generally speaking. Or if not the best player, one of the best players on their high school team. Or junior college team, for that matter. You're putting them into a group of everybody who was the best player on their high school team, or the best one or two players on their team, or junior college team. How do they respond to that? Some guys have never been challenged before. Not really. Not at the level that you have to be successful at the Division I. You know, you've got to, play harder, play faster. You've got to play cleaner. You've got to do all the stuff at a level even better than what you've done before. And some guys don't handle that well. Some of those guys are not mentally prepared for the challenge of going from high school to college, or from freshman or from senior to freshman, because that's the transition you're making, senior to freshman. So that actually, I think that bodes really well for these guys. The other reports that I've got are just how skilled all these guys are. And I mean, guys that you would not have thought this time last year would be mentioned in the same breath as the term skilled. Breon Sanchez. He's got a nice little 10-foot jumper. Personally, I'd be surprised if Breon had developed any of a number of offensive skills, because his strength coming out of high school was defensive. He hasn't shown an ability at the college level to be offensively proficient. So if he's developing skills, that's a positive. That's great. If anybody says, hey, Brown's looking better on the offensive side, good, because that's what we need to have. I mean, you look at those guys, you've got to develop those skills, and you've got to have guys that are stepping up and expanding their game. Terrell Miller lost 20 pounds. Everybody talks about him losing 20 pounds. That's great. That really is awesome, because he's a guy with that 20 pounds gone. I think he is a legitimate stretch four, because he'll be able to run and cause issues for bigger guys trying to guard him on the perimeter. And losing that weight and being able to run up and down the floor makes him that much more dangerous. We all know he can shoot. We all know he's got some skills on the interior as well. But if you lose a little bit of weight, you jump a little bit higher. You run a little bit faster. You're in better positions. You're able to come out and do things. You can start running a pick and pop or a pick and roll, or, you know what I'm saying, because you've got that wind later in the game. Those are valuable things.
I've lost 20 pounds over the last couple of years, and I'm not jumping any higher.
Yeah. Do you have any documentation of that? I don't think you've tested it. No, I just look at it. I'm happy to hear the reports of progress, and seeing that these guys are coming together and gelling. I think that was an issue last season. The team never really gelled. They never really had the cohesion. They didn't have the roster that they could really set guys into positions where they could be uber successful. There weren't enough post players. There were way too many wings, stuff like that.
Racer football gets back to OVC play this weekend,
yep,
as they make the trip to Tennessee Martin. The over the last 15 years, things don't turn out well when the Racers go down to Martin to play football.
Yeah, and this is a Martin
Actually,
team.
wherever they play Martin, it doesn't usually turn out well.
Right. No,
And who would have ever thought 15 years ago that we'd be saying that?
Yeah, that's just one of those where you can see where they've put their focus as an athletics department. It's going to be an interesting game. Martin coming off their 7-0 loss from 1962 against Austin Peay. I just don't know what to expect. They were ranked. They were top 25 team in the nation going into that game. They lose to Austin Peay, which still doesn't sound right. Is Austin Peay that good? Maybe. But then again, Murray State put a lot more points than 0 on Austin Peay. What does that mean? What does it entail when we're talking about playing Martin? And the answer is, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen for this Murray State team. I don't know how they're going to react coming off their game against Louisville, which, in all honesty, despite the score, despite the fact that you're playing against one of the better teams in the country, I thought they acquitted themselves rather well. I mean, that could have been a much worse game. And it wasn't. They actually showed some signs of life. They showed signs on defense. They got pressure on the quarterback eventually. They got some offensive movement. They did some things that, quite frankly, I hadn't seen much of against their 1AA opponents. And they did that against Louisville, at Louisville.
It's difficult to know what to expect other than history suggests that Martin wins the game. Murray State just hasn't been able to beat them very often over the last 15 years. Now, having said that, one thing that people need to keep in mind is that it's not an even playing field. Murray State isn't paying their coaches a lot of money. They have a limit on the amount that they can spend on scholarships. They're not limited in the number of scholarships, but they do have a limit on the amount. And as a result, the areas that they're recruiting are, if you look at their roster, the vast majority of their players are from Kentucky,
right,
Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. That's the vast majority of their players.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you'll get a junior college player from California.
Yeah.
They have a few guys like that, JUCO kids from out of the area, but the vast majority of their players are from those states. And in those states, they're having to recruit against Jacksonville State. They're having to recruit against UT Martin, Tennessee State, and those schools have been more successful in the OVC over the last X number of years than the Racers have. So it's hard.
My question is this. Bringing this back to something that I know that our men's basketball fans and listeners would love to hear. At some point, we're going to hear about to what extent football played in the Missouri Valley Conference's decision. None. You don't think they made any thoughts at all about
Murray
football?
State wasn't going to the Missouri Valley Football Conference, at least not immediately. There was something lined up for another league.
Okay. Makes you wonder what league.
I can't discuss that, but it was going to be at least 5 years before they would have moved to the Missouri Valley Football Conference. So it played no role.
Okay, so then the question needs to be asked from a purely Murray State fan-centric concept. If we're not going to play football and allow ourselves the ability to play football on an even footing with our competition, We either need to say, yes, we're going to play football. We're going to do the things that we need to do. We're not going to put restrictions on how much we spend on these individual scholarships,
or the coaches.
Or the coaches. We're gonna figure out how to pay market value for this. We're gonna figure out how to do this in a way that makes us be competitive in our division. Or we need to have a serious conversation about ending the football program at Murray State University. I know that doesn't. There are going to be people out there whose heads explode because I brought that up, and there's going to be other people out there going, "Yeah, get rid of it. We're not winning." This isn't that question. This is not a short-term answer. This is a question for long-term thinking. Either you play a sport and you do so in such a way that you get benefit from that sport, and that means being able to bring in players, being able to bring in good coaches, being able to maintain those relationships and develop a program that's done the right way and is successful at some point, or you do something else. Because at this point, football is being used as a method to go get paychecks.
Okay.
And that's not acceptable.
Well, the
accepts
paychecks help pay for the football program.
Absolutely, right.
So that's significant.
But then the question becomes, if you're going to ask the football team to go play Northern Illinois, University of Louisville, University of Kentucky, and go and play those games knowing that, hey, look, we're not going to win. We're going to get it all determines on margin of victory. How close can we keep it? And then you come back and you say, well, those checks you got, we're going to give you 40% of them so that you can run your program, or thanks, but we just don't have the money to do this. Why keep it going? The problem that I have is you're not helping Murray State Athletics as a brand. You're not helping the university as a brand by going and being bad at a sport for no other reason than you've hamstrung yourself.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I would be perfectly okay with dropping football. There will be fans who go nuts when I say that. Okay? But what I hear most often when I mention that, or when the subject is discussed, is someone will say, well, what about the band?
I like the band. Band's awesome. Have them play at halftime during soccer games.
That's what I've said. Turn the football field over to Jeremy Grove's soccer team.
Well, and then the question becomes, well, can you field? You have to field so many Division I sports. Fine. Have men's soccer.
We already have one of the largest venues for volleyball in the nation.
Absolutely. And one of the best. I'm not going to lie. It is fantastic to go out there and watch a volleyball match in Old Racer Arena. It is fantastic. They've done a great job bringing it up, and it is wonderful to watch sports.
You put the women's soccer team at Stewart Stadium, you might have the biggest women's soccer facility in the country.
Absolutely.
And so, I don't know. I don't think they'll drop football.
I don't think they will either, but something's got to give. Either play
one winning season in 13 years. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Well, the fact of the matter remains, if you're restricting your ability to compete in recruiting, you are restricting your ability to compete on the field. There's no other way around that. I mean, that's why if you look at the Pioneer League, which is non-scholarship
Well,
football.
I'm not telling you that the ability to recruit is restricted. There is a dollar limit on scholarships, I'm told.
Which is a restriction on recruiting. Because if you find a kid who's good enough, but his scholarship is limited to this, and now all of a sudden it's us versus insert any other team at our level, and they don't have that restriction, he's not going to come here.
Yeah. High school football, the Lakers missed out on their best chance for victory last Friday as they lost to Hopkins County Central.
A great game.
It was an exciting game. They play Pikeville tomorrow. Last I checked, Pikeville was a 42-point favorite in the Litkin House ratings. It's been a difficult year for Laker football.
It has been, yeah. I had the opportunity to come and duck back in to Laker football in the booth, and had a great time doing it. And I wish the Lakers could have come away with a victory. But you're right; it's just a struggle. Injuries. I mean, I'm surprised you haven't been injured. Troy's got a hamstring. I know he's been nursing the hamstring. He hasn't talked about it, but he's nursing a sore hamstring and has been for a few weeks, but he's been playing through it. But that's what it's the nature of sports in general. Injuries happen. Some teams can handle it, some teams can't. The Lakers have done well to be competitive in the games that they have been. But you're right, missed a golden opportunity against Hopkins County Central on Friday. And now they get Pikeville, which is no easy task.
You got anything else on sports?
Soccer matchup. We brought up women's soccer. Murray State playing Eastern Kentucky in Richmond. Matchup for the top two teams in the OVC. A huge game for the Racers. A chance for them to really cement themselves. They're in the top 50 of the RPI, and it's well-deserved, to be honest with you. They've won all except 2 games. One they had a draw, and then they had a loss to SLU, which is one of the top teams in the country. If I really hope they can pull this one out. I want them to solidify their place, because I'm here to tell you, if you get a chance to watch the OVC tournament over at Cutchin Field, it is awesome. It is beautiful. You can go out there with a blanket. You get to watch great soccer, and I look forward to seeing how they can come through on that one.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.